Hi, you found the extra credit hidden opportunity if you want it. Don't have to do it. The extra credit would be to write a one-page paper about this piece using the right terminology. So let me tell you a bit about Guernica. This is a huge mural. It's about, I think, 25 feet tall, long. And you see that it seems like something very dramatic is going on. Well, Picasso was in Paris when reading a newspaper when he heard that Guernica, which is near his hometown, had suddenly been bombed. And the people in Guernica, it was a small town kind of like Prince George or Dinwiddie, Petersburg, the people in Guernica were going about their business and going to school and going to work and, going to the grocery store, when all of a sudden these unmarked planes came overhead and started dropping bombs on everybody. And it started blowing up the school and blowing up the market, blowing up the hospital. People started running for the woods for cover. And these armed guys came out of the woods in unmarked uniforms and just gunned them all down. And in the space of about 3 hours, this town was just wiped out. And the newspapers were saying that rebels, leftists in the area had done this. And Picasso didn't believe a word of it because he didn't see how the leftists could, given what they were protesting, be at fault. And so he thought maybe somebody else was against it. Well, Guernica was in an area that was controlled by a dictator named Franco, and his nickname was the Bull. And they had a lot of poverty, a lot of strife. They were pretty poor, and they were living under the rule of Franco. And so in this area, there had been protests against the government about their living conditions. Well, when we know this about this piece, Picasso read about it in the paper and decided to do a series of drawings, which led to this mural. Picasso had been asked by Spain, his home country, to paint a mural for the World's Fair on the theme of technology. And he had refused because he likes bullfights and women, and he didn't want to paint about technology for the World's Fair. But when Guernica happened, he felt like he had to speak out and do something. So he said, yeah, I'll do the mural at this pavilion, and let me work on it. So he creates this painting. Now, when you start on the left-hand side of the painting, you kind of see smoke coming out of the mountains, as though maybe this is a mountain, like Guernica, mountain town, that has been bombed with smoke coming out of it. But it seems attached to this weird beast, this weird bull. And it looks kind of like, smoke coming out of his ass. And I see this bull is really distorted. Well, Franco's name is the Bull. You see a woman shrieking and crying, and her hands are completely like flailing, and she's holding a dead baby. Very different from Kathy Kollowitz's Death Seizing a Woman, where she protects her baby. But Picasso's inspiration for this woman was Michelangelo's Pieta, the way that she holds the child. Now, it looks rather grotesque the way the woman is screaming, but imagine that you're holding your baby who has just died because of bombs that have hit the market. So she's shrieking and her face is distorted in pain. You'll see that there is a dead soldier laying at the bottom, and his eyes are knocked funny in his head, as though he's been knocked down. And when you look, you can see that his outstretched arms put him almost in a crucifix position, and in his right arm, the center bottom of the painting, you'll see a broken sword, showing that he fought, but he lost. Above him is some kind of crazy horse, and we already know that horse means some kind of power. And this horse seems like it's got some kind of crazy disjointed power, because I see a bomb in the horse's mouth. So the power of the bomb? Well, it turned out that during this event that the newspapers started running these stories about how it was the rebels in Guernica that had gotten the planes. And the townspeople, there were a few left who had been there, said, no, no, it doesn't seem like that. They don't have the money for it. And they realized that the planes that had come overhead had been the result of a deal between Franco and his next door neighbor, Adolf Hitler. This was before Hitler had really expanded his powers, but he had the idea of carpet bombing. Carpet bombing is where you got an airplane, you fly overhead, and you drop bombs at strategic points. Well, in 1937, this had not been done before and was finally to the point where airplanes could carry bombs with some precision, but they had to practice because they didn't know exactly when they released the bombs where they'd fall. And so carpet bombing is to leave a pattern, like lay it like a carpet and flatten everything out. Well, Franco had grown tired of these people protesting around Guernica, and he had made a deal with Hitler to fly planes overhead and use Guernica as target practice so he could get rid of them. And they realized by the shape of the planes and where they came from and the soldiers, slowly they got to piece this together. Well, I'm telling you this because you can see that this horse seems really out of control. Some kind of power that's out of control. The power to kill people with carpet bombing, the way that people in power, hold the bombs ready. Well, you can see that the horse's body is fragmented and it has like a newspaper marks on it, but you can't read it. That's a reference to the propaganda that came out, the news stories that were fake, where you really didn't know what you were reading. At the top of the horse, I see an eye. Usually an eye at the top of a painting is an oculus, the eye of God. Here the eye could be closed, but it also has a light bulb in it, representing, to me, technology. I then see that there's a diagonal line that comes out from the eye of God through this lamp of knowledge that somebody is reaching out, trying to understand what's happening. It creates a strong diagonal down to a person who is staggering. This is the world trying to look in on horror at what has happened. You'll see at the far right a woman who looks like she's screaming and being devoured. She's being devoured by a tank as though it's rolling over her. There's a small window at the top of the painting on the right that shows, there's an outside world, but nobody can escape. Now, I just named focal points. The smoke on the mountain, Franco, the bull, the Pieta, the woman with the child, the archetypal soldier at the bottom of the page, the horse that has power, the eye of God that looks down, except for here, perhaps the eye of God is something else. Over to the diagonal of people trying to look in and gain knowledge, down to the person staggering, and up to the person being swallowed. Notice that when I talk about these focal points, that the compositional pathway, that is the invisible line that connects the focal point, goes from focal point to focal point, goes up and down and up and down and up and down, as though bombs are falling down. Up, you look up, it's falling down. You look up, it's falling down. I want to make a note about the oculus, the eye of God, with technology. That is light bulb is a false way of making light. And with these carpet bombs, it was the first time that technology was used to wipe people out instead of fighting hand to hand. And so there's this idea that maybe people were playing God. Before it was God who decided who died. Now you could fly over with a plane and drop bombs and decide who dies. So Picasso did this piece. He did it without color because he wanted it to be drained of color. He wanted to use these fragmented shapes to feel like everything was falling apart. Well, Picasso works and works and works on this, and he installs this 25-foot mural at the World's Fair, and they briefly open it, realize what it's about, and Picasso is in trouble with Spain because this is an anti-government. He's accusing Franco of killing these people and of being in cahoots with Hitler and showing the devastation of his actions for everybody to see. So later on, a day or so later, Picasso's in his studio working, and the Gestapo famously bangs on his door, to come and get him. And they have a photograph of this piece, Guernica, and they show it to him, and they say, "Did you do this?" And he just looks at them and says, "No, you did this." Well, when you look at this piece, I would like for you to be able to analyze it using the proper vocabulary. But I think when a piece is archetypal, it lives on. And while this is about Franco and Hitler teaming up for carpet bombing, you can look at this and see any number of things. You might see COVID with people dying and the beast being the disease. You might see the technology as being maybe a vaccine. This might be about 9/11 when people were brutally killed. You could look at this and think about, I don't know, any manner of things that talk about out of control power, devastation, the world looking on. So if you did write a paper about this, the highest level of critical thinking and of Maslow's self-actualization would be to look at this and relate it to your own life in a way that made sense. All right, so that's Guernica and your extra credit opportunity. Do with it as you will on a one-page paper.